I mostly read public domain books here on Glenn Reads Books to You, and they were written a long time ago, so they're usually racist, or sexist, or bigoted, but in there somewhere is a story, and that's why those stories are famous. Other times, I read works from independent authors, and they're delightfully not racist, but they might have adult language or adult situations, like, making sex. So that's your warning, but I'm sure you're grown up enough to handle it. Don't write to me complaining. My knees are beautiful. My knees are beautiful. Oh, son of a... All right, take a seat, you little idiot. Welcome to the Glenn Reads Books to You mansion. It's a fun little bit where I pretend to live in a mansion and not just recording in my basement. It's where I read the hottest public domain books and short stories. This week, we're going to read Empire of the Necromancers by Clark Ashton Smith. You want to hear some stuff I stole from Wikipedia? Sure. Clark Ashton Smith was born January 13th, 1893, and died August 14th, 1961. He was basically a poet. I'm just kind of winging it now because I want to talk about my knees. He was basically a poet, and he loved poetry, and he loved doing sculpture and stuff. But then it turns out that he made friends with H.P. Lovecraft at one point and started a friendship. And I thought, oh, God. Oh, no. So whenever he needed money, he would start writing short stories for, like, Weird Magazine and that sort of thing. And I thought, oh, no, he's going to be another horrible goddamn writer. But I can't find anything bad about this guy. In fact, I learned that he wasn't racist or xenophobic like H.P. or Robert E. Howard. I looked all over, and if anything, he was just a nice guy. Someone on Reddit, when I was trying to just look up anything about this guy, everyone's saying, why doesn't anyone like celebrate his work? How come movies aren't made out of it? How come people don't talk about it all the time? And no one really knows, because apparently he was the better writer out of the three. But one person says, something to note about Clark Ashton Smith's writing is that it completely lacks Lovecraft's xenophobia. Smith is delighted that other peoples and cultures exist. No one's portrayed as a monster because they're not from Rhode Island. So I looked more into him, and he is just the nicest guy. He was so nice that I think he lived with and financially supported his parents, even while he suffered bouts of illness himself. He was broke, and he preferred writing poetry, and only went back to short stories once his parents were ailing and needed more money during the Great Depression. But otherwise, he just went back to poetry and sculpting. He got married in the 1950s, presumably after his parents died, to someone who was always yelling at him to write more short stories because they were apparently making money. And at some point, he grew a goatee. He did gardening for neighbors and did more sculpting and writing poetry and stuff, much to his wife's chagrin, and then he died of a series of strokes in 1961. He is so nice that I don't think I want to read his book in the library. I want to take him someplace special because my library shelves are filled with the prying eyes of all these horrible, horrible authors. Horrible, racist, xenophobic authors. So I think we're going to go down to the smoking room where there's a closet, and we're going to sit in my closet, and I'm going to read this story to you so that none of the authors get jealous or angry and then start haunting me here in my own goddamn mansion. Back to my knees. My knees apparently are fine. I have what's called runner's knee, and it's just my stupid kneecap is not staying where it's supposed to when I'm walking around. So I was like, oh, God, do I have arthritis? I'm old now. Do I have to worry about things like arthritis and stuff? But no, the person who was touching me up, feeling my legs, giving my thighs a little squeeze, even said that my knees look beautiful in the x-rays. Okay, well, with that, this grandfather clock, I guess I'll stop talking about my beautiful knees. I don't want to make you jealous and haunt me. So why don't we go down to the smoking room closet? I'll see you there. Okay, I'm coming. Here I am. I have a bad knee. It's a beautiful knee, apparently, but it's not a great knee, so I still walk kind of slow. Why don't I close the door here? There we go. I enjoy my closet here in the smoking room. Yes, it smells like cigarettes, but it's filled with pillows, and I have one upturned flashlight sitting there on the floor, pointing up at the ceiling, so we can kind of see in here. Snuggle up as I read this story to you. The Empire of the Necromancers by Clark Ashton Smith. The legend... Oh, God, it's already starting. I hate when you read anything about sci-fi or fantasy where did you hear that? Oh, can you still hear the birds? We're in the closet. I have pillows all over the floor for us to recline on. I have pillows stapled to the walls to soundproof it. And we're still hearing the goddamn birds, hearing that my wife's goddamn birds. All right, fine. Well, we're just going to deal with it. I don't want the other authors knowing about this one nice one. God. So, yeah, authors that do sci-fi or fantasy and they make up bizarre, unpronounceable names back in the 60s and 70s. They're real big fans of that. Burp. And so it's happening here. The Legend of Mmatmour. Momatmour. And Sodsma. The legend of Momatmour and Sodsma shall rise only in the latter cycles of earth, when the glad legends of the prime have been forgotten. Before the time of its telling, many epochs shall have passed away, and the seas shall have fallen in their beds, and the new continents shall have come to birth. Perhaps in that day it will serve to beguile for a little the black weariness of a dying race, grown hopeless of all but oblivion. I tell the tale as men shall tell it in Zothacue, the last continent, beneath a dim sun and sad heavens, where the stars come out in terrible brightness before eventide. Okay, well, that's the beginning. Part 1. Momatmour and Sodsma were necromancers. Ooh, just the word necromancers. Immediately, in a fantasy story, I'm immediately thinking about heavy metal music. Who came from the dark isle of Nat, with 2 A's, to practice their baleful arts in Tinnerath, beyond the shrunken seas. But they did not prosper in Tinnerath. Oh, for death was deemed a holy thing by people of that gray country. And the nothingness of the tomb was not lightly to be desecrated. And the rising up of the dead by necromancy was held an abomination. So, after a short interval, Momatmour and Sodsma were driven forth by the anger of the inhabitants and were compelled to flee toward Sincor, a desert in the south, which is peopled only by the bones and mummies of a race that the pestilence had slain in a former time. The land into which they lay were drear and leprous and ashen below the huge, ember-colored sun. Its crumbling rocks and deathly solitudes of sand would have struck terror in the hearts of common men. And since they had been thrust out in that barren place without food or sustenance, the plight of the sorcerers might well have seemed a desperate one. But smiling secretly, with an air of conquerors who tread the approaches of a long-coveted realm, Sodsma and Momatmour walked steadily into Sincor. Unbroken before them through fields devoid of trees and grass, and across it's a desert, and across the channels of dried-up rivers, there ran the great highway by which travelers had gone formerly between Sincor and Tinnerath. Here they met no living thing, but soon they came to the skeletons of a horse and its rider lying full of the road, and there's a road in the desert, and wearing still the sumptuous harness and raiment which they had worn in the flesh. And Momatmour and Sodsma paused before the piteous bones, on which no shred of corruption remained, and they smiled evilly at each other. The steed shall be yours, said Momatmour, since you are a little the elder of us two, and are thus entitled to precedence. And the rider shall serve us both, and be first to acknowledge fealty to us in Sincor. Then, in the ashy sand by the wayside, they drew a threefold circle, and standing together at its center, they performed the abominable rites that compelled the dead to rise from the tranquil nothingness and obey henceforth in all things the dark will of the necromancer. And afterward, they sprinkled a pinch of magic powder in the I'm not going to do that heavy metal music every time I say necromancer, but I'm tempted. On the nostril holes of the man and the horse, and the white bones, creaking mournfully, rose up from where they had lain and stood in readiness to serve their masters. You pour magic powder in the nostrils? I'll let it go. So, as they had been agreed between them, Sodisma mounted the skeleton steed and took up the jeweled reins and rode in evil mockery of death on the pale horse, while Mamantamor trudged on beside him, leaning lightly on an ebon staff, and the skeleton of the man, with its rich raiment flapping loosely, followed behind the two like a servitor. After a while, in the grey waste, they found the raiment of another horse and rider, which the jackals had spared, and the sun had dried into the leanness of old mummies. These also raised up from death, and Mamantamor bestrode the withered charger, and the two magicians rode on in state, like errant emperors, with a lich and a skeleton to attend them. Other bones and charnel remnants of men and beasts, to which they came anon, were duly resurrected, in like fashion, so that they gathered themselves in ever-swelling train in their progress through Sincor. I kind of wish I could do this with a dead squirrel's corpse I discovered recently in my backyard. It's been there probably since the fall, but then it got really cold out and snowed and everything, and now its skin is just gross. Like, it looks like a mummy. It's really gross. Can I raise it from the dead and make it my servitor? I don't know. Let's find out, the book tells us. Along the way, they neared Yethlyrome, which had been the capital. They found numerous tombs and necropole, inviolate still after many ages, and contained swathed mummies that had scarcely withered in death. All these they raised up and called from sepulchral night to do their bidding. Some they commanded to sow and till the desert fields and hoist water from sunken wells. Others they left at diverse tasks, such as the mummies had performed in life. The centuries-long silence was broken by the noise and tumult of myriad activities. The lank liches of weavers toiled at their shuttles, and the corpses of plowmen followed their furrows behind carrion oxen. Can you just, till sand and then grow crops? I don't know if that's what they're going for here, but that seems weird. Weary with their strange journey and their oft-repeated incantations, Mamantamor and Sodisma saw before them at last, from a desert hill, the lofty spires and fair, unbroken domes of Yethlyrome, steeped in the darkening stagnant blood of ominous sunset. "Oh, it's a goodly land," said Mamantamor, "and you and I will share it between us and hold dominion over all its dead and be crowned as emperors on the morrow in Yethlyrome." "Aye," says Sodisma, "for there is none living to dispute us here, and those that we have summoned from the tomb shall move and breathe only at our dictation, and it may not rebel against us." So in the blood-red twilight that thickened with purple, they entered Yethlyrome and rode on among the lofty, lampless mansions, and installed themselves with their grisly retinue in that stately and abandoned place, where the dynasty of Nimboth emperors had reigned for 2,000 years, with dominion over Sincor. In the dusty golden halls, they lit the empty lamps of onyx, by which means of their cunning sorcery, and supped on royal viands, and provided from past years, which they evoked like in manner ancient and imperial wines, were poured for them in moonstone cups by the fleshless hands of their servitors, and they drank, and they feasted, and reveled in phantasmagoric pomp, deferring till morrow the resurrection of those who lay dead in Yethlyrome. They rose betimes in the dark crimson dawn from the opulent palace beds from which they slept, like dusty, gross palace beds, right? Like rotting palace mattresses. For such remained to be done. Everywhere in that forgotten city, they went bustily to and fro, working their spells on people that had died in the last year or the past and had laid unburdened. And having accomplished this, they passed beyond Yethlyrome into that other city of high tombs and mighty mausoleums, in which lay the Nimboth emperors and their more consequential citizens and nobles of Sincor. Oh, Here, they bade their skeleton slaves to break the sealed doors with hammers. And then, with their sinful, tyrannous incantations, they called forth the imperial mummies, even to the eldest of the dynasty, all of whom came walking stiffly, with lightless eyes in rich swathings sewn with flame-bright jewels. And also, later, they brought forth, to a semblance of life, many generations of courtiers and dignitaries. Well, moving into solemn pageant, with dark and haughty hollow faces, the dead emperors and empresses of Sincor made obeisance to Mimitor and Sodisma, and attended them like a train of captives through all the streets of Yathliram. Afterward, in the immense throne room of the palace, the Necromancers mounted the high double throne, where the rightful rulers had sat with their consorts, amid the assembled emperors, in gorgeous and feudal state. They were invested in sovereignty with the sear hands of the mummy of Hestion, the earliest of the Nimboth line. I hate this. When they start cramming all the bizarre words together, you shouldn't have to remember these things. That's what I hate about sci-fi from back in this time. They make up all these weird lineages and whatever, and the histories of whatever things, and they give them the weirdest names, and you're just supposed to remember it. As if I want to go back and read this 3 times to make sure I fully absorb it. Who had ruled in half mythic years? Then all the descendants of Hestion, crowding the room in a great throng, acclaimed with toneless, echo-like voices the dominion of Mimitor and Sodisma. Thus did the outcast necromancers find for themselves an empire and a subject of people in the desolate barren land where the men of Tinnerath had driven them forth to perish, reigning supreme over all the dead of Sincor by virtue of their malign magic. They exercised a baleful despotism. Tribute was borne to them by fleshless porters from outlying realms, and plague-eaten corpses, and tall mummies scented with mortuary balms, and went to and fro upon their errands in Yathliram, or heaped before their greedy eyes inexhaustible vaults, the cobweb, black and gold and dusty gems of an antique time. Dead laborers made their palace gardens to bloom with long perished flowers, liches and skeleton. I should look up liches. I thought a lich was like a devilish thing. Let's find out what the hell a lich is. In fantasy fiction, a lich, from the old meaning of corpse, related to modern German lich or Dutch. Okay, fine. Undead creature. Okay, just an undead creature. All right, fine. I'm used to Adventure Time, where the lich was like this weird evil wizard. Whatever. Liches and skeletons toiled for them in the mines, or reared superb, fantastic towers to the dying sun. Chamberlains and princes of old time were their cupbearers, and stringed instruments were plucked for their delight by the slim hands of empress with golden hair that had come forth untarnished from the night of the tomb. Those that were fairest, whom the plague and the worm had not ravaged overmuch, they took for their lemans and made to serve their necrophilic lust. Oh, God, having sex with corpses. Well, okay. That seems like as good a place as any to take a break and get out of this closet and go down to the basement where I can tell you about the latest upcoming books from Penguin Random House. It's not weird. The basement's probably better than the closet. You're in the closet. You've been okay with that so far. The basement is going to be a nice breath of fresh air for you. So just get down to the basement and shut the hell up. Well, there you are. I beat you. It's kind of weird how I beat you when I walk so slow. Do I have little secret doors with secret staircases? You'll never know. Anyways, welcome to my basement. Yeah, it's pretty empty. It's just got dripping water and 2 folding chairs. One over there that you're sitting in underneath that naked light bulb while I stand here, not sitting in my folding chair, while I play my guitar for you underneath this naked light bulb. Huh? I'm pretty good. As I let you know about the latest upcoming book from Penguin Random House called Discount Armageddon by Seanan, Seanan, Shannon, McGuire, whatever. It's urban fantasy, paranormal fiction, and contemporary fantasy. Discount Armageddon. Want to learn about it? Sure you do. The first book in a New York Times best-selling Seanan McGuire's witty urban fantasy encrypted series about a family of cryptozoologists who act as a buffer between humans and the magical creatures living in secret around us. Quote, the only thing more fun... Oh, really? They have like the testimonies at the top? Usually it's at the bottom. The only thing more fun than an October Day book is encrypted book. Says Charlene Harris, #1 New York Times bestselling author of Suzuki Stackhouse series. Oh, God, her? Really? From True Blood? Cryptid, noun. Any creature whose existence has not yet been proven by science. Also see monster. Cryptozoologist, noun. Any person who thinks hunting for cryptids is a good idea. Also see idiot. Okay, this is fun. Ghoulies, ghosties, long-legged beasties, things that go bump in the night. The Price family has spent generations studying the monsters of the world, working to protect them from humanity. And humanity, from them... Enter Verity Price. Despite being trained from birth as a cryptozoologist, she'd rather dance a tango than tangle with a demon, and is spending a year in Manhattan while she pursues her career in professional ballroom dance. Sounds pretty simple, right? Right? Well, it would be if it weren't for the talking mice, the telepathic mathematicians, the asbestos supermodels, and the trained monster hunter sent by the Price family's old enemies. The Covenant of St. George. When a Price girl meets a Covenant boy, high stakes, high heels, and a lot of collateral damage are almost guaranteed. I don't know what that means. To complicate matters further, local cryptids are disappearing. Strange lizard men are appearing in the sewers, and someone's spreading rumors about a dragon sleeping underneath the city. Okay, well, that's Discount Armageddon by Seanan McGuire. You can get a paperback for $20 February 25th from Horseshit Amazon, Horseshit Barnes & Noble. I don't know enough about Books A Million. Bookshop.org is a great place. You should probably go there. Hudson Booksellers, don't know enough. Powell's, Target is horrible. Walmart's horrible. And thanks to our current environment, I can't shout Walmart like I used to because I have no pride in it anymore. Well, with that, why don't we take our depressed selves back upstairs to the smoking room closet where we continue reading the rest of this book. I'm coming. It's my knee. How did I beat you before, but I didn't beat you this time? What is the secret of why I'm so fast in the basement, but not coming out of the basement? These things you'll never know, because they're my secrets. Part 2. In all things, the people of Syncor performed the actions of life at the will of Mimitor and Sodasma. They spoke. Oh, they moved. They ate and drank as in life. Did they really? Why? They heard and saw and felt with a similitude of the senses that had been theirs before death. But their brains were enthralled by a dreadful necromancy. I am not doing the heavy metal music. They recall but dimly their former existence, and the state to which they had been summoned was empty and troublous and shadow-like. Oh, their blood ran chill and sluggish. They have blood still. Some of them are just skeletons, mingled with water of lethe. Okay, and vapors of lethe clouded their eyes. Burp. Dumbly, they obeyed the dictates of their tyrannous lords. Fuck off, it's my show. Without rebellion or protest, but filled with a vague, illimitable weariness, such as the dead must know. When having drunk of eternal sleep, they are called back once more to the bitterness of mortal being. Ow! They knew no passion or desire, or delight, only the black languor of their awakening from lethe, and a gray, ceaseless longing to return to that interrupted slumber, whatever. Youngest and last of the Nimboth emperors was, oh God, another name, Aliro, who had died in the first month of the plague, and had lain in his high-built mausoleum for 200 years before the coming of the Necromancers. chug, 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 raised up with his people and his fathers to attend the tyrants. Aliro had resumed the emptiness of existence without question, and it felt no surprise. Oh, he had accepted his own resurrection and that of his ancestors as one accepts the indignities and marvels of a dream. He knew that he had come back to a fated sun, to a hollow and spectral world, in order of the things in which his palace was merely that of an obedient shadow. But at first he was troubled only, like the others, by a dim weariness and a pale hunger for the lost oblivion. Drugged by the magic of his overlords, weak from the age-long nullity of death, he beheld, like a somnambulist, the enormities to which his fathers were subjected. Yet somehow, after many days, a feeble spark awoke in the sodden twilight of his mind, like something lost and irretrievable, beyond prodigious gulfs. He recalled the pomp of his reign in Yethli-Ram, and the golden pride and exultation that had been in his youth. And recalling it, he felt a vague stirring of revolt, a ghostly resentment against the magicians who had haled him forth to his calamitous mockery of life. How darkly he began to grieve for his fallen state, and for the mournful plight of his ancestors and his people. Day by day, as a cupbearer in the halls where he had ruled aforetime, Aliro saw the doings of Mimitur and Sodisma, and saw their caprices of cruelty and lust, gross, their growing drunkenness and gluttony, and he watched them wallow in their necromantic luxury, gross, and became lax with indolence, gross with indulgence. They neglected the study of their art, and they forgot their many spells, but still they ruled, mighty and formidable, and lolling on couches of purple and rose. They planned to lead an army of the dead against Titterath, dreaming of conquest and vaster necromancies. Who dreams of vaster necromancies? They grew fat and slothful as worms that have installed themselves in a charnel rich with corruption. And pace by pace, with their laxness and tyranny, the fire of rebellion mounted in the shadowy heart of Aliro, like a flame that struggles with Lethian damps. And slowly, with the waxing of his wrath, they returned to him something of the strength and firmness that had been in his life. Seeing the turpitude of his oppressors, and knowing the wrong that had been done to the helpless dead, he heard in his brain the clamor of stifled voices demanding vengeance. Among his fathers, through the palace halls of Yethli-Ram, Aliro moved silently at the bidding of the masters, or stood awaiting their command. He poured in their cups of onyx the amber vintages brought by wizardry from hills beneath a younger sun. He submitted to their contilamus, don't know what that word is, I'm not looking it up, and insults. They insult the dead corpses that are serving? All right. And night by night, he watched them nod in their drunkenness till they fell asleep, flushed and gross amid their arrogated splendor. There was little speech among the living dead, and son and father, daughter and mother, lover and beloved went to and fro without sign of recognition, making no comment on their evil lot. But at last, one midnight, when the tyrants lay in slumber, the flames wavered in the necromantic lamps. Aliro took counsel with Hestion, his eldest ancestor, who had been famed as a great wizard in fable and had been reputed to have known the secret lore of antiquity. Hestion stood apart from the others in a corner of the shadowy hall. He was brown and withered in his crumbling mummy cloth, and his lighted obsidian eyes appeared to gaze upon nothingness, and he seemed not to have heard the questions of Aliro, but at length, in a dry, rustling whisper, he responded, I'm old. And the night of sepulchre was long, and I've forgotten much. Yet, groping backward across the void of death, it may be that I shall retrieve something of my former wisdom, and between us we shall devise a mode of deliverance. And Hestion searched among the shreds of memory as one who reaches into a place where the worm has been, and hidden archives of old time have rotted in their covers, till at last he remembered and said, I recall that I was once a mighty wizard, and among other things, I knew the spells of necromancy, but employed them not, deeming their use and raising up the dead an abhorrent act. Also, I possessed other knowledge, and perhaps among the remnants of that ancient lore, there's something which may serve to guide us now, for I recall a dim, dubitable prophecy made in the primal years at the founding of Yethliram and the Empire of Sincor. The prophecy was that an evil greater than death would befall the emperors and the people of Sincor in future times, and that the first and the last of the Nimboth dynasty, conferring together, would affect the mode of release and the lifting of the doom. The evil was not named in the prophecy, but it was said that the two emperors would learn the solution of their problem by breaking the ancient clay image that guards the nethermost vault below the imperial palace and Yethliram. Then, having heard this prophecy from the fated lips of his forefather, Ilero mused a while and said, I remember how an afternoon in early youth, when searching idly through the unused vaults of our palace, as a boy might do, I came to the last vault and found therein a dusty, uncouth image of clay, whose form and countenance were strange to me. And knowing not the prophecy, I turned away in disappointment and went back as idly as I'd come to seek the moted sunlight. Then, stealing away from their heedless kinfolk and carrying jeweled lamps that they had taken from the hall, Hestion and Ilero went downward by subterranean stairs beneath the palace and, threading like implacable furtive shadows the maze of nighted corridors, and they came at last to the lowest crypt. Here, in the black dust and clotted cobwebs of an immortal past, all they found, as had been decreed, that clay image, whose rude features were those of a forgotten earthly god, and Ilero shattered the image with a fragment of stone, and he and Hestion took from its hollow center a great sword of uncrusted steel, and a heavy key of untarnished bronze, and tablets of bright brass, on which were inscribed all the various things to be done, so that Sincor should be rid of the dark reign of the Necromancers, and people should win back the oblivious death. So, with the key of untarnished bronze, Ilero unlocked, as the tablets instructed him to do, a low and narrow door at the end of the nethermost vault, beyond the broken image. And he and Hestion saw, as he had prophesied, the coiling steps of somber stone that led downward to an undiscovered abyss, where the sunken fires of earth still burned. In leaving Ilero to ward the open door, Hestion took up the sword of unrusted steel in his thin hand and went back to the hall where the Necromancers lived, laying asprawl on their couches of rose and purple, with the wan, bloodless dead about them in patient ranks, upheld by the ancient prophecy and the lore of the bright tablets. Hestion lifted the great sword and struck off the head of Mimitor. Oh, good, I shouldn't have to say his name anymore. And the head of Sodisma. Okay, so I didn't say his name either. With each a single blow. Then, as had been directed, he quartered the remains with mighty strokes, and the Necromancers gave up their unclean lives and lay supine, without movement, adding a deeper red to the rose and a brighter hue to the sad purple of their couches. Then, to his kin, who stood silent and listless, hardly knowing their liberation, and venerable mummy of Hestion spoke in murmurs, but authoritatively, as a king who issues commands to his children. The dead emperors and empresses stirred, like autumn leaves in a sudden wind, and a whisper passed among them, and went forth from the palace to be communicated by length at the devious ways to all the dead of Sincor. All that night, during the blood-dark day that followed, the wavering torches of the light of the failing sun and the endless army of plague-eaten liches, of tattered skeletons, poured in ghastly torrent throughout the streets of Yethliram and along the palace hall where Hestion stood guard above the slain necromancers. Unpausing, with vague, fixed eyes, they went on like driven shadows, to seek the subterranean vaults below the palace, to pass through the open door where Ilero waited in the last vault, and then to wend downward by 1,000 steps, to the verge of that gulf in which boiled the ebbing fires of earth. There, from the verge, they flung themselves to a second death and the clean annihilation of the bottomless flames. But after all had gone to their release, Hestion still remained alone in the fading sunset beside the cloven corpses of Mimitor and Sodasma. There, as the tablets had directed him to do, he made trial of those spells of elder necromancy which he had known in his former wisdom, and cursed the dismembered bodies with that perpetual life and death which Mimitor and Sodasma had sought to inflict upon the people of Sincor. God, that was the longest sentence. And maledictions came from the pale lips, and the heads rolled horribly with glaring eyes, and the limbs and torsos, they writhed on their imperial couches amid clotted blood. Then, with no backward look, knowing that all has been done as had been ordained and predicted from the first, the mummy of Hestion left the necromancers to their doom, and went wearily through the nighted labyrinth of vaults to rejoin Aliro. So, in tranquil silence, with no further need of words, Aliro and Hestion passed through the open door to the nether vault, and Aliro locked the door behind them with its key of untarnished bronze. And thence, by the coiling stairs, they wended their way to the verge of the sunken flames, and were one with their kinfolk and their people in the last, ultimate nothingness. But Mimitor and Sodasma, men say that their quartered bodies crawl to and fro to this day in Yethli Ram, finding no peace or respite from their doom of life in death, and seeking vainly through the black maze of nether vaults the door that was locked by Aliro. Well, that's the end of that. Why don't we get out of this closet and just go into the other part of this smoking room and review what the hell we just read? Well, there you are. Why don't you take yourself a little seat? And you can see there on the coffee table a baboon's skull. And if you take the top part of the head off, you'll see that the skull is full of cigarettes. Oh, God, it's louder now that we're out here in the main room. So, have a cigarette. And what the hell did we just read? Well, basically, two wizards with really dumb names, I guess, on another planet, because the sun's dying and stuff, it's not a completely abandoned planet. They were kicked out of certain societies. People kicked them out, so they were cast off to the desert. And while in the desert, they just kept raising dead to make a kingdom for themselves of dead, decaying, gross people. Why would you want that? I don't frickin' know. But they did, because they wanted to take over more land. They want to go back to the main city. Whatever. Alluded to having sex with corpses that weren't as rotted as others. That's pretty gross. So, what do we learn? Don't piss off the dead. I guess just leave the dead alone, because at some point they might kind of remember their past and realize I shouldn't just be sitting here getting wine for these two drunk wizards, and they'll kill you. And then also, you might not die. I don't know if they're trying to say the spells that they cast was just kind of everywhere, and it affected them, so their torsos are just kind of like crawling around on the ground. I don't know. Whatever. Well, there you go. I'm just glad it wasn't racist. Wasn't that nice? Somebody from the H.P. Lovecraft circle is just a nice, normal guy. If you ever see a picture of him, if you go to Wikipedia and you look him up, he just looks like a fussy little boy in 1900. So, good for him. He sounds like a really nice person. He lived more or less in poverty, just kind of did his art and helped out neighbors and helped out his parents until eventually getting married. And that's kind of it. So I guess that's what we learned. You can be a nice person and not be racist and still write science fiction. Weirdly having sex with corpses. Okay, maybe he's got a little something there that we don't know about. But otherwise, it's fine. He's fine. He was fine the whole goddamn time. All right, well, with that, thanks for listening. And maybe I'll see you next week. Well, it appears you found me in the part of the podcast I hate the most, where I tell you all about the places on the internet where you can find me. You can tell I hate this because of the sound effects making it sound like a stormy night in the drawing room of the damned. Now, are you cool? I like cool people. It's the reason why I got involved in this business to begin with, just to meet cool people, not losers. So if you're cool, feel free to go over to my website, nuzzlehouse.com. But if you go there, you get to hear some of the other stuff that I and my wife work on, like the Radio Mystery Theater show, where we try to recreate the same show that used to be on in the 70s, but they don't make any episodes anymore. So we make our own, and we just steal all their commercials. And also, just stay in the curious mind, we made a Christmas album. If you go to our link tree, you can see that we made a Christmas album. It's the first thing we did after getting married, which I think everyone should do when they get married, is start talking about the Christmas album they're going to make. And since I think you might be cool, you can always just email me directly, glenn.nuzzles@gmail.com. But don't email if you're a nerdlinger or a dork. Now, back to business. I can't believe I drank all of them already. There's got to be one left.